North Korea has 50 nuclear warheads. The United States, more than 5,000. By every measure, America outguns Pyongyang. Better missiles, bigger bombs, stronger military. Conventional wisdom says North Korea could never truly threaten the American homeland, except there's one scenario where 50 nuclear weapons is all North Korea needs. One missile, one warhead, detonated 300 kilometers above Kansas, and 90% of Americans dead within a year. Not from the blast, but from starvation, disease, and societal collapse. It's called an electromagnetic pulse attack. And according to testimony before Congress, North Korea has the capability right now. Not in 5 years. Not eventually. Today. In this video, we'll explore how an EMP attack actually works, why America's infrastructure remains shockingly vulnerable, what the real death toll would be, and whether North Korea would actually dare to push the button. We're going to examine North Korea's EMP threat by exploring 1. The technical reality of how EMP attacks work, and North Korea's demonstrated capabilities. 2. America's critical infrastructure vulnerabilities, particularly the electric grid. 3. The cascading consequences of a nationwide blackout lasting months or years. And we'll conclude by examining the scenarios, from protection measures to potential conflict escalation. Let's start with what an EMP actually does. The physics of catastrophe. An electromagnetic pulse from a nuclear weapon isn't like the explosions we typically imagine. When a nuclear warhead detonates at high altitude, anywhere from 40 to 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface, it creates 3 distinct pulses of electromagnetic energy. The E1 pulse arrives within nanoseconds. According to Congressional EMP Commission testimony, this creates voltage potentials exceeding 50,000 volts per meter across hundreds of miles. That's enough to permanently fry the semiconductor chips in computers, smartphones, and vehicle control systems. The E2 pulse follows milliseconds later, similar to lightning, but occurring after electronics are already compromised by E1. The E3 pulse arrives last, lasting minutes and inducing massive currents in long-distance power lines, currents measured in hundreds to thousands of amperes. What makes this particularly insidious is the altitude. A single 10-kiloton warhead, smaller than what destroyed Hiroshima, detonated 300 kilometers above Kansas, would generate an EMP field covering the entire continental United States. As Dr. Lowell Wood testified to Congress, North Korea shouldn't be considered as possessing first-generation nuclear weapons. They potentially have the most advanced nuclear weapons on the planet due to foreign assistance. And here's where it gets terrifying. North Korea doesn't need a perfect intercontinental ballistic missile. According to congressional testimony by Peter Vincent Pry, Pyongyang could launch from a freighter off the coast, use a satellite to position a warhead, or even rely on a missile intercepted by US defenses, because an EMP warhead detonates without needing to survive atmospheric re-entry. North Korea demonstrated exactly this capability during the 2013 nuclear crisis when its KSM-3 satellite passed over the US heartland. In October 2024, North Korea test-fired the Hwasong-19 ICBM, which flew for 86 minutes and reached an altitude of 4,776 miles, both records. A congressional report from May 2025 confirmed the Hwasong-19 could deliver a nuclear payload to targets throughout North America. That brings us to the real vulnerability. What happens when the lights go out? America's Achilles heel. The United States electric grid wasn't designed for electromagnetic warfare. Built incrementally over a century, the system depends on approximately 2,000 extra-high voltage transformers that step down electricity from transmission voltages of 345,000 to 765,000 volts to levels usable by regional grids. These transformers are irreplaceable in any meaningful time frame. According to congressional testimony, utilities rarely experience loss of even one EHV transformer, but recovery from such a loss takes months, especially when no spare is available. Each transformer costs more than $1 million and requires more than a year to manufacture and install. A 2019 Electric Power Research Institute study provided some cautious optimism, finding that between 3 and 14 transformers would be at potential risk of thermal damage from the E3 component of a single high-altitude EMP burst. However, the study acknowledged that the E1 and E2 components could cause widespread damage to electronic control systems, protective relays, and digital equipment that manage the grid. The Congressional EMP Commission painted a grimmer picture in multiple testimonies. Dr. William Graham, Commission Chairman, warned that an EMP attack could shut down the US electric power grid for an indefinite period. The Commission's reports emphasized that even if transformers survive, the grid's control systems, the digital brains that balance supply and demand across regions, would be destroyed. Consider what happened in Quebec in March 1989. A severe geomagnetic storm, a natural EMP-like event from the sun, took the entire Hydro-Quebec power grid offline in 90 seconds. One New Jersey transformer required 6 weeks to replace. That was a regional event affecting 6 million people. Scale that to 330 million Americans with thousands of damaged systems, and the recovery timeline stretches into years. But the grid's collapse is just the beginning. What follows is far worse. The cascade effect. Let's zoom out and look at what a year-long blackout actually means for a modern society. The United States can sustain a population of 330 million people only because of technology-dependent infrastructure. According to testimony by Peter Pry before the House Homeland Security Subcommittee, the US would face catastrophic consequences within 30 days. Food in supermarkets would be consumed within 3 days. National food supplies in regional warehouses would begin spoiling within 30 days as refrigeration fails nationwide. Water treatment plants, which require electricity to pump and purify water, would shut down. Within a week, most Americans would lack access to clean drinking water. The Congressional EMP Commission estimated that 90% of the American population would perish within a year from starvation, disease, and societal collapse. That's 297 million deaths, more than all American military casualties in all wars combined, multiplied by 20. Transportation would grind to a halt. Modern vehicles with electronic fuel injection and computer control systems would be disabled. Even vehicles that survive would find gas stations unable to pump fuel without electricity. Supply chains connecting rural farms to urban populations would disintegrate. Medical facilities would exhaust backup generator fuel within days. Life support systems, dialysis machines, and medication requiring refrigeration would fail. The chronically ill would die first, followed by the very young and very old as sanitation systems fail and disease spreads. Former CIA Director James Woolsey stated that the EMP threat is as real as nuclear threats from Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Yet America has done remarkably little to protect against it. This isn't theoretical. Look at Puerto Rico in 2017. Hurricane Maria destroyed the island's electric grid. 3 weeks later, only 10% of 3.4 million Puerto Ricans had power. With outside aid, food shipments, and no electromagnetic damage to electronics, recovery still took months. Pry told Congress to look at Puerto Rico if you want to understand EMP consequences, and that's with the rest of America functioning to provide assistance. The protection gap. Perhaps the most frustrating aspect is how preventable this vulnerability is. According to congressional testimony, protecting America's electric grid against EMP would cost approximately $2 billion. That's less than the cost of 2 B-2 stealth bombers. The work could be completed in roughly 3.5 years. Protection involves installing blocking devices in the neutral-to-ground conductors of large transformers to reduce E3 pulse damage and adding metal oxide varistors to protect against E1 overvoltages. The 2012 SHIELD Act proposed exactly these hardware-based solutions, yet implementation has lagged. The Electric Power Research Institute recommends deploying fiber optic-based communication and protection systems to alleviate electromagnetic interference, along with low-voltage surge protection devices for critical equipment. Some utilities are beginning to stockpile spare transformers through programs like the Spare Transformer Equipment Program, but coverage remains inadequate for a nationwide event. 11 government studies have confirmed the severe threat and vulnerabilities from EMP. The technology to protect the grid exists. The costs are manageable. Yet the work remains largely undone. Meanwhile, North Korea continues advancing its capabilities. The Federation of American Scientists estimates Pyongyang possesses sufficient fissile material for up to 90 nuclear warheads. North Korea announced in January 2023 its intention to mass-produce tactical nuclear weapons and has demonstrated multiple delivery systems: intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and satellites. That brings us to the ultimate question. Would North Korea actually launch an EMP attack? The strategic calculus. There are essentially three scenarios for how an EMP conflict might unfold. Scenario 1. Deterrence holds. The most likely outcome is that North Korea never uses EMP weapons. Despite possessing the capability, Pyongyang understands that any nuclear attack, even one that doesn't directly kill civilians through blast effects, would trigger overwhelming retaliation. The Biden administration's 2022 Nuclear Posture Review explicitly states that any nuclear attack by North Korea will result in the end of that regime. North Korea's nuclear program serves primarily as a deterrent and diplomatic bargaining chip. An EMP attack would achieve destruction but guarantee regime annihilation. Kim Jong Un, whatever his faults, has demonstrated a survival instinct. This scenario remains most probable. Scenario 2. Crisis escalation. A more dangerous possibility emerges during a crisis scenario. Imagine tensions over Taiwan or the Korean Peninsula escalating to conventional conflict. North Korea, facing imminent defeat and regime collapse, might view EMP as a last resort option to equalize the battlefield. Unlike targeting cities, which would kill millions immediately and guarantee international condemnation, an EMP attack could be rationalized as attacking military infrastructure rather than civilians, even though the downstream effects would be catastrophic. As congressional testimony noted, Russian and Chinese military doctrines describe cyber attacks and physical sabotage coordinated with EMP attack to crash critical infrastructures. The risk in this scenario is miscalculation. North Korea might believe an EMP would paralyze American response without crossing the threshold that triggers full nuclear retaliation. They would almost certainly be wrong, but by then, it would be too late. Scenario 3. Proxy attack. The nightmare scenario involves North Korea providing EMP technology to non-state actors. A terrorist organization could launch an EMP attack from a commercial vessel without immediate attribution. According to congressional testimony, Iran has practiced launching missiles from ships in the Caspian Sea at trajectories consistent with EMP attacks. The Congressional EMP Commission warned that approximately 14 countries understand EMP physics and military applications, including Iran, which was estimated in 2014 to be within 2 months of nuclear weapons capability. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy began patrolling off the US East Coast in February 2014. Attribution in such an attack would be difficult initially, and the United States would be simultaneously dealing with societal collapse and investigating the perpetrator, exactly the chaos a sophisticated adversary might exploit. Conclusion: the preventable catastrophe. So, North Korea's EMP threat. Could one pulse cripple America? After examining the technical capabilities, the demonstrated vulnerabilities, and the cascading consequences, the answer is unsettlingly straightforward. Yes, absolutely. North Korea possesses 50 nuclear warheads and ICBMs that can reach North America. A single 10-kiloton weapon detonated 300 kilometers above Kansas would generate an EMP field covering the continental United States. With approximately 2,000 critical transformers at risk and recovery times measured in months or years, the grid failure could kill 90% of Americans through starvation and disease. North Korea isn't just a theoretical threat, it's a current threat. The Hwasong-19 ICBM tested in October 2024 can deliver nuclear payloads throughout North America. The capability exists today. What makes this especially infuriating is that protection would cost $2 billion and take 3.5 years to implement. That's 0.028% of the 2024 US defense budget. The technology exists. The threat is documented. Yet America remains vulnerable. This matters because the United States faces the bizarre situation of spending hundreds of billions on conventional military superiority while remaining existentially vulnerable to a relatively simple attack from a third-rate regional power. North Korea doesn't need to defeat America militarily. Just turn off the lights and wait. But what do you think? Is the EMP threat overblown? Or is America gambling with national survival by not hardening the grid? Would North Korea ever actually dare to launch such an attack knowing the consequences? Make sure to subscribe for more insightful analysis, in-depth assessments, and breaking news reports on defense and geopolitical developments from around the world. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Stay safe, stay informed. Peace out.